Hi, my name is Staley Temple, and I'm a senior psychology major at UNCW. And with being a psychology major, I'm exposed to a lot of different individuals on the LGBTQ plus community. So I was wondering have you ever faced any adversity with students finding out about your faith and being involved in the LGBTQ plus community? If that's ever impacted the dynamic of your teaching, or if they've ever expressed discomfort in that, and wondering how to navigate that. Thank you.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Meet the Prof. I'm Shane Hartley, and my friend Spence Hackney and I are so grateful you are here with us. Thanks for tuning in. And our goal is to encourage Christ-centered conversations on the college campus. And so today you have the treat of hearing our interview with Bill Fisk. And Bill is a professor emeritus at Clemson University in the field of teacher education, training future teachers out there. And I especially appreciated how he shared about a season, several years even, of him wrestling with God of whether or not he should tell his students that he's a Christian. And then once he did, how he dealt with some of the hostility that he received from that. So he's very honest about things he would do differently as well. So please remember to like or subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And if you're a college student, find us on Instagram, Meet the Prof Official, and leave us a question that you have personally for Christian professors, and maybe we can put it on the show. And if you are a Christian professor, find us on meettheprof.com and consider sharing some there about your own relationship with Jesus. We would love that. And so without any further ado, here is our interview with Dr. Bill Fisk.
So in your Meet the Prof profile, which I appreciate you filling that out too, it means a lot to a lot of students. So thank you for that. You mentioned that you took ballet as a preschooler. I definitely need to hear more about this.
Me too.
I don't know a whole lot about it, honestly, other than the fact that I know that it happened. I also took tap for much longer than that, up into about fifth grade. No, not fifth grade, probably not quite that long. And then did ballroom dancing as well. So
that's great. Do you still do the ballroom dancing, Fisk?
No, that was a special event somewhere around fifth, sixth, seventh grade, where anyway, I actually got to go to a competition and actually won a couple of ribbons.
Oh, how impressive! About that? Wait, I'm intimidated by you already. I'm that guy who can talk a lot, but I get on the dance floor and I just quit moving. Like I just become a statue standing there.
I have no fear because I really don't care what people think. So
that's my problem. Okay. I do care. I'm so self-conscious on the dance floor.
It is. Yep.
Oh, that's good. Well, thanks for sharing that. And you're and Shane's going to love talking about you being a Seminole too. So I know Shane's going to dig into you about that. That's all he wants to talk about is Florida State.
It's happened twice. So recently we had another interview with a faculty member who did undergrad work at Florida State. So go Seminoles.
Well, I actually got all 3 degrees from Florida State. So
that's great.
Yeah, but I'm a Tiger now.
Yep, Clemson
Tiger.
Yep, no competition there.
You know, and you've been part of 2 of the greatest fan bases in America. Mm-hmm. Like there is not much as audacious as a Clemson fan. I mean, maybe an Alabama fan. I don't know. Those guys are. I dated a girl from Clemson, and it was like football was a whole new thing when I went down there. Like, this is incredible.
Wow. Well, so Bill, I'm all the more eager now to hear what is an embarrassing moment you had when you were a college student, because maybe I can picture where it happened on the Tallahassee campus.
Well, maybe. I was not a Christian when I was at Florida State, and I was in a fraternity, and the little sisters were doing a skit, apparently. Actually wasn't even there when they were doing it, but I heard a lot about it. And they were making fun of the fact that when I had hair, that I would push it up like this a lot. So she was making fun of that and who I was following around and all this kind of stuff. So it was like, Okay. So that's the way people see me. All right.
And it's a girl. It's a little more embarrassing when it's a girl who's mocking me.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you weren't a Christian at this point. Like you were in this fraternity. When did you become a Christian? How did that work out in college?
I'd like to encourage students who do share with other students. One of the people that meant the most to me in terms of how God worked in my life was a guy named Steve Mosley. And I played club soccer with him. I think he might have been involved with crew. Sweetest guy, just the sweetest guy. And I enjoyed being friends with him. And I know that having left college that, 50 years later, if you had asked Steve, who on your soccer team became a Christian, I wouldn't have been in the top 10 probably. But God used him, and he was special. The things that he said, the things, just how he lived life was important, and God used that in my life. One of the pieces that he used. I mean, it would be another 10 years before I became a Christian, but that's how long. And one postscript to that is, about 6 years ago, I looked Steve up and found him through Facebook, and he had become a missionary. Surprise! And he was coming back from Peru. Well, first of all, I was able to tell him, Steve, I just wanted to encourage you and tell you, what God used you in my life. And then when he was coming back into the States, he and his wife actually came by and spent the night with us. And that was really a sweet reunion.
Will you tell us more about what caused the real change in your heart towards Jesus? Because you described on meettheprof.com you being at a place probably close to divorce, and it sounded like a low point. Can you describe that some for us?
Sure. I was a driven perfectionist, and I went through a period of 10 years while I was at Florida State. I got 3 degrees. I was a school psychologist. I was a first grade teacher. I got married. I owned a couple of different houses. I mean, I was doing it all.
All in 10 years.
Yeah, in 10 years. Yeah, it was an amazing decade. And then we moved out to Texas, where I got my first professor job. And all this time, I was trying to be this perfect person and failing. I knew I was failing to be that perfect person. And one of the pieces of what that looked like to me was to have a good marriage. And my wife and I were just arguing all the time. And it got to the point where somebody, I don't remember which one of us, mentioned the D word. And that was, God had been working in a lot of different ways in my life. Just a note that God has a great sense of humor. We were attending a Baptist church. I would have told you I was a Christian. I was actually in a Navigators 2-7 leadership training class.
Wow. Yeah.
How insane is that as a non-Christian?
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, through a lot of different things came together. And that was kind of like the final straw of proving to me that I could never be perfect, and that the only way that anybody was perfect was through Jesus, and that he was the one that was perfect. And so that, God just basically had to take the 2x4 and hit me upside the head with the marriage card. And yeah, I have one of those dramatic conversions where you fall on your face and give your life to the Lord. And a lot of people say, oh, you have such a cool, story. And it's like, no, you have the cool story where you say, I never knew a day that I didn't know Jesus as my Savior. Those are the cool stories.
Yeah.
What a
do you
good
still
challenge.
struggle with perfectionism? Is that still a battle in your
Oh, yeah, I played golf today. It's a humbling experience.
the harder you try, the worse you get. That's my take on golfing.
Well, God's been good to let me really understand that he is in control. And so the bigger things get, the easier it is for me to give them to God and to trust him and to not worry about being a perfectionist. The places I struggle, Spence, are the little things So it might be the wedge shot to the ninth hole, that's like, this doesn't matter. Why am I so upset about this? Because I want to do it right. Or even dropping something on the floor, get mad about something like that. It's like that's where my sin comes out the most. It infuriates my wife too. She just, why do you do that?
She doesn't struggle with that.
Not that way, no. We all struggle with different things, but that's my struggle, is the little stuff and getting angry or upset about the little stuff. Can I tell you one quick story?
Absolutely.
I recently was leading worship at our church, and I confessed openly while I was doing the prayer. And before we prayed, I confessed that I had been struggling behind the wheel to not be a very kind driver. And I'm going to tell you how many people came up to me and talked to me about that later too. That was a great entree.
Were they scolding you, or they identified with you?
Oh, no, identifying with me.
Okay,
And because I did that in front of other people, God honored that, and He's really helped me tremendously with that. And I'm doing really, really well behind the wheel in terms of saying, I don't know what that person's going through. I still think they're an idiot for doing that, but but I'm pretty calm about it now.
Oh, so just you sharing it gave you some victory over it, you're saying?
Yeah. But I think it was from the repentance and the open repentance, in front of other people too.
That takes a lot of courage too, to stand up in front of people and bare your soul like that. So you spent a lot of your career, all your career in education, teaching people how to be educators. How do you see God's handiwork in that? Like, where do you see God manifest Himself in your field?
In my field or in my life as an educator?
I would say right now in your field of education. Yeah.
Wow. I don't know about the field itself, because I'm discouraged by the field itself and a lot of what goes on. But, it's just exciting to see how people who have a heart for God, who are teaching, how God honors that and creates relationships, within the teaching learning situation, whether it's, kindergarten, first grade, all the way up to, graduate school, whatever. There's just so many opportunities to be a part of other people's lives. And if you're a Christian, you have such a tremendous witness, as long as you're not a hidden Christian, which kind of brings us to the whole faculty commons thing. As a college professor, don't be hidden. As long as people know what you believe and who you are, and then you go about living your life in a way that smells sweet, like my friend Steve. That's the key, I think. So the field of education is a tremendous opportunity, a tremendous mission field, a tremendous, you can impact so many lives, whether you realize it or not. I mean, I can't tell you how many times God has encouraged me by having some student come back up and talk to me. And I may or may not even remember who they are, years ago. My niece just told me she works at a daycare in Jacksonville, Florida. They just got a new lady teacher, and she started talking to her, and she went to Clemson, and it turns out she had me as a professor. So
wow.
It's a small world.
Small world.
Yeah. All right. So this is a little bit of a pivot, Shane. Bear with me. What advice do you have for the public school teacher right now? Like somebody who's in that, sees it as a ministry field. How do you coach them?
Good question. Well, again, I think it's really important that you know what your rights are in terms of what you can do, and that you do that lovingly, not confrontationally or angrily or anything like that. For example, as a faculty member, you have the right to tell people that you're a Christian. You have the right to put stuff, like I did. You can put stuff in your syllabus, even. You can put stuff on your email. There are a lot of different things you can do that identify who you are and that give people an opportunity. When you do Meet the Prof, that's an awesome thing. You just put the little link down there, and people can go find out all kinds of stuff about you if they want. And students are curious. They would rather go look at it, sometimes than have you tell them. But you can, and for years I did tell as part of who I was. I always introduced myself and told a lot about myself in the first few minutes of every class. And again, another great story that way is in terms of God working. God laid it on my heart when I did become a Christian. I was already a faculty member, and he laid it on my heart one day that I was still separating work and there was Christianity and there was my work. He said, you need to let people know you're a Christian. It's like, oh, okay, I know I need to do that. I can do that at the beginning of class. And so class would come and I would chicken out and I wouldn't do it. And I would feel so guilty and I would confess and then I'd feel better and say, I'm going to do it next semester. I know I'm going to do it next semester. And this went on a whole bunch of semesters. And finally, the last time that it happened, I was so remorseful and I knew I was going to do it the next time. I just knew I would do it the next time. And God said, but the semester's not over. And it's like, and so I had this argument with God for a whole semester about, I can't do this in the middle of my class. I can't do this I'm going to do it next semester. I guarantee you I'm going to do it next semester. Nope. It's not over. It's not over. Finished the last day of class and it's like, see, the semester's over. And God's like, no, it's not. You still have final exam. It's not over.
You can't
so
get away.
I wrote my testimony out on a piece of paper and made copies. And I put them face down on my desk in the final exam. And I told my students, I said, when you finish your exam, you have to pick up one of these things. I don't care what you do with it. You can throw it away. You don't even have to read it, but you have to pick up one of these things.
Wow.
And I went to my dean. I went to my dean, who fortunately was a Christian, and I told him what I had done, because I was afraid one of those was going to pop up somewhere, which they didn't. God protected me. And he kind of said, that wasn't the wisest thing to do. And I said, I know, but I'll do it at the beginning of class next time, I promise. That was never going to happen again. And it never did. I did it at the beginning of class for the rest of my career.
Did you have anybody come back and ask questions about your testimony or anything after that?
I don't remember anybody coming back. There definitely wasn't any negative pushback. There might have been a student who talked to me, but honestly, I just remember that God protected me and there wasn't any fallout from it.
I love you walking us through that tension of, I think God's calling me to do this. Oh, I don't want to do it. Don't want to do it. And,
it was a battle for a whole semester. It was a battle. Me and God, we were battling. It felt like, when
you were a fairly new Christian, you're saying.
Yeah, it was only a couple years into it. Yeah.
Well, I have a follow-up question. Like, I didn't realize that you became a Christian while you were a professor, and you don't hear that very often of a professor going from non-believer to a believer. I was wondering if you have any insight of what are some of the things you think that keep faculty from coming to faith in Christ?
I think the biggest one is that they think a lot of faculty think that it doesn't make sense, and because they don't know even factual stuff, they don't know. For example, all the prophecy about Jesus that was fulfilled. They don't know things like evidence that demands a verdict, books like that. And so they just have this misconception that you got to be an idiot if you believe that stuff. And, if they have a chance to develop a relationship with a Christian, they can find out, hey, this person's not an idiot, and they believe that. So maybe I can talk to them about this. I've battled that on two fronts because people believe that about Christians and they believe that about people in education too.
Funny. Well, that we've taken questions from students and we love asking those to the professors. And the question we have today is from a student named Staley Temple. She's actually a psychology major. And you have some training in psychology, don't you? Can you tell us some about that? Because you're education, but you worked in psychology.
All my degrees, these are actually in psychology.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe that'll give you an interesting angle to this very difficult question. So take a listen to this.
Hi, my name is Staley Temple, and I'm a senior psychology major at UNCW. And with being a psychology major, I'm exposed to a lot of different individuals on the LGBTQ plus community. So I was wondering have you ever faced any adversity with students finding out about your faith and being involved in the LGBTQ plus community, if that's ever impacted the dynamic of your teaching, or if they've ever expressed discomfort in that, and wondering how to navigate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Staley. Appreciate that question. And first of all, let me just say that psychology courses and books should have little tags on them, like cigarettes, that say, warning, this may be hazardous to your spiritual health. Because the field of psychology is wonderful, because we study the behavior of people that God made, and there is order to that. But when we get to the explanations in psychology, so many times we just go sideways, and that's where things go wrong. As far as the question about those kind of students, I have had situations where students reacted to that 2 minutes at the beginning of class when I shared my testimony. One that was very sad. I never picked up on it until the final course evaluation, and this was back when we used to do the handwritten ones. And they turned the bubble sheet over and started writing at the top and just ranted and raved and almost broke their pencil a couple of times about me and why I would say what I said and all of that. And first I was kind of a little defensive and angry about, that. But then I got sad, because it's like, how did I miss that? How did I miss that kind of reaction? But then I got hopeful, because it's like, well, if you've got that strong a reaction, God must be working in your life. He's really stirring you up somehow. And maybe he's used that in some way. So that was one of those cases where I didn't really know what God was up to. Another one was a grad class where the student got very offended the first day of class and started coming late to class, missing some things. And then she wrote this long letter to my department chair, who was also part of the LGBTQ community at that point, because I was retired from being a chair at that point. And so the department chair, brought me in and just was, you can't do this. Why are you doing this? And that was a great opportunity for me to witness to that department chair, even though I had worked with them a long time and actually helped them get that position. And I blew it. I blew that opportunity. I have prayed for that person a lot since that time, but she surprised the heck out of me when she said, "Why do you do that?" And I had such a great opportunity to explain in detail why I do that. But I just kind of gave a milquetoast type of answer to that at the time, which was, I'm sorry I missed that, but she's in God's hands, whatever he chooses to do. But I had worked with her. I'd worked with another when I was chair. I worked hand in hand with another chair in our college, and he was, he was openly gay, and he and I just worked together. I mean, and I guess that's the answer to the question is, you just treat people like people. God made all people. They're all human beings with the stamp of God that reflect God. And so we have to treat every person as worthwhile and a unique human being. And I think sometimes they're surprised by that, because the narrative is that we hate them, and we don't, or we shouldn't. We should love them just like anybody else, maybe even a little bit more. And so I would encourage you to be as loving as possible, maybe even overtly, in terms of reaching out to them and just being kind, because they don't get that a lot of times. I mean, they don't see it a lot of times, and they don't understand that a lot of times. And that'll open a conversation faster than anything else, I think.
What a great answer. Treat them as people and just be kind, because you'll surprise them.
Yeah.
I love that. That's such simple advice. That's something I can do. I think I can be kinder.
So we have a lightning round of questions where these are even more appropriate to you, because these are questions. A lot of these questions are about your advice to others. And so with you being a retired professor, you have a unique perspective to look back and learn from things that you did well, things you wish you had done differently. And I really appreciate you being transparent already with some of the regrets you have. So we're just going to start shooting some questions at you.
Okay.
The very first one is, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Listen more closely to Steve.
On your soccer team.
That's right.
All right. How about what advice would you give to a graduating senior?
I think the most important thing a graduating senior can do, and I know they're all focused on maybe getting a job or getting married and all that kind of thing, but the most important thing is to, wherever you land, is to find a good church that's preaching the word and get involved. And I'll back that up and say it's easier to do that if you'll start doing that as a student. Don't just get into parachurch ministries, as great as those are, but get into a local church and be active. Don't just go on Sundays, but be active so that you're looking for that as soon as you graduate, you're still looking to continue that practice. That's the best thing you can do.
Well, what advice would you have for other Christian professors, maybe specifically ones who are not sure how they can express their faith on campus?
Sure. It's really all about taking the next step and praying a lot and asking God to show you what that next step is. It's going to be different for different professors in different situations, different parts of their career. Professors who don't have tenure are really scared of doing it, but understand that you do have rights, and it's not going to cost you tenure if you do your other job well. God will honor your efforts in what you do, and you'll be fine with that. But you can identify yourself with what's in your office, if nothing more than that, so that students who come by or faculty who come by can recognize, that you have some of these kinds of things in your office. You can put that little tag on your email that says Faculty Commons or that says Meet the Prof. You can take the next step and put it in your syllabus even and say, hey, if you want to know more about me, you can check this out, but I'm not going to take time in class, to do that. If you want to go even further, there was a big movement of morals, and teaching morals in everywhere. And one of the things we did at Clemson was we identified statement of moral behavior that Christians could put in their syllabus. And we landed on the final 6 commandments, which was man's relationship to man. And we translated that into higher ed, what that looked like in a college. So it didn't read like Exodus. It read more like what you should be doing in college. And I literally would put that as one of the pages in my syllabus and sign it at the bottom and tell my students that this is what I strive to live by. If you think I'm ever not doing that, I know you don't want to confront me openly probably with that, but you can slip a piece of paper under my door and just say, hey, you screwed up here. You really aren't honoring number 4 or whatever.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
And it's what Spence is wanting to ask, but I'm going to ask. So the 7th commandment of thou shalt not commit adultery. How did you translate that into your syllabus for ethics? What did you say?
It probably has to do more with treating your colleagues, especially of the opposite sex, appropriately and loving them and being kind without letting your mind and your actions stray in ways they shouldn't.
We'll probably do a whole follow-up on that, on how that commandment's applied to higher education. All right. So what advice would you give to parents of college students?
I think first and foremost is to keep the lines of communication open with your student in a non-judgmental way. As parents, it's really tough to let go and not want to tell them what to do. And many students are looking for their parents to tell them what to do, and they probably shouldn't be telling them what to do. Maybe giving them advice or talking through some things with them. Yeah. So keep those communication lines open, and once again, just encourage them if they're open to it to be part of a local church while they're in school. If they are already a believer or professing to be a believer, I can tell you what not to do. Don't take your student to school and take them to a church and take them to a parachurch ministry and introduce them to the leader and say, oh, Johnny or Susie wants to be part of this. I can't tell you how many leaders and pastors have never seen those kids again, since the day you did that.
Okay, well, the last question is, this is related to Psalm 145, which says, one generation shall commend your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. So when you look back over your life, how have you seen God work? What's some way you really saw God come through that you especially would commend to a younger generation?
One of the pieces of I mentioned that I had pieces in my salvation story, and one of the pieces was actually my wife's mother, who actually shared the gospel with me one time over a campfire when we were camping at a state park. And I don't know exactly what her walk was with the Lord, but at that particular moment, she shared the gospel with me, and so that actually was a piece that God used. I mean, there was a twinkle of opening there when she did that. So
Wow. Well, I know Spence is with me on this. We just feel so honored to get to know you like this, and thank you so much for putting so much of your story online and then speaking with us now. And so, Bill, even though you're retired, is there any way that students or other faculty can follow you or even reach out to you if they want to talk to you more?
anybody can write me at my email address. I still have a Clemson email address. It's bill252@clemson.edu.
Well, this has been fun and so meaningful. And thank you so much for spending this time with us on Meet the Prof.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, awesome listeners, we appreciate you too. Thanks for joining us for this interview. And if you want to know more about Bill Fisk or any of the Christian professors we've been interviewing or maybe haven't interviewed yet, you can go to meettheprof.com and you can look up professors by the state they're in, even by specific campus. If you know of some, you can look them up by name. And we hope that will be a source even for support for students, that students could look up and find professors there if they want to ask spiritual questions too. So please don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow wherever you're listening to this podcast, and share it with a college student or a professor you know that it might encourage and help. And if you're listening and you would like to financially support the ministry that my wife and I do with Faculty Commons, thank you so much. And you can do that online at give.cru.org/0424344. And thank you again for listening. And so until next time, we hope that this encourages you to have a Christ-centered conversation on the college campus.